I want to comment on a few things. One, the plight of bauxite workers in Kokwani in particular, and the failure of successive administration in devising a formula for local stake in industries and local stake in our resources that are seriously lacking. And you will see what we could have had if we have had a system to ensure that local people have a stake in our economy. The bauxite deal there given to Rusal under the bauxite company of Guyana give Rusal 90% equity in that company and 10% to the government. Now, if we had a plan that say, okay, we give you 60% as a strategic investor, and we give the rest of the equity to the employees of bauxite in Linden and Kokwani, the problems facing bauxite today would not have happened. It's a total disrespect for workers in Kokwani, a total control of the investor over the community there and all the equipment that they got under the lease arrangement. If we had any plan to give a form of equity, whatever form it takes, to the workers, instead of the government keeping that equity, we would have had a more participatory decision-making, and we would have had a more harmonious relationship between employees and the investor in the bauxite community. And that's what is lacking. We find in Linden the same. We give a foreign investor instead of a local investor who, when they make profits, would have stayed in the country. We give them without any regard to the needs of the workers in the bauxite industry and the residents of Linden. If we had given shares in that, just have a strategic investor who brings technology and capital and know-how and marketing skills, but the rest of it, have the people, the beneficiaries in those communities. Today we would have uplifted the people of Linden, New Amsterdam, and all these people without any worry at all, without any government involvement. But this is a question of leadership, of ideas, of strategic thinking that is lacking since independence, that we don't have in the PPP and we don't have in the PNC. You see, the other day, they went to Essequibo and said, oh, we're going to give you lands, and the people waved the flags. After we say we will give you lands. After 23 years, they didn't give the people the lands. Now we heard that the president will abolish slums without even thinking who created the slums. Who created the slums in the inner city of Georgetown? The same person, the same system, the same party system created those slums, the PPP and the PNC. Now he will abolish slums. I don't know how in God's, how he will do that. It takes decisive strategic action. It takes a heart, it takes a disposition to help people to do these things, to create jobs and elevate communities, not go and make a slogan again, we're going to eliminate slums. Look at sugar, the same pattern of the bauxite, you will see it in sugar. The failure of sugar is as a result of the party politics, party control of the board under the PPP, was shared government ministers and party cronies on the board of directors. They failed because the lack of business knowledge to take action to diversify Gaisuko when it was needed, to diversify the lands into other agricultural crops. And as a result, they have bankrupt Gaisuko. We find the political leader making the decision, the former political leader making the decision to invest $200 million US in a failing industry when that money could have gone elsewhere. When we could have divest some lands progressively every year to sugar workers, and encourage them to plant a specific crop and invite a private sector-led initiative, investment, that could have taken those crops, process it, and export. We could have uplift and empower those communities economically if that structure was implemented, but they don't have vision. You know, they see people only through racial lines, and as soon as they get in government, they don't care about anybody, and they don't listen to advice. Look at the advice that the APNU administration received, that evaluate the richness of the Starbrook block and get a better deal. They didn't take the advice. Somebody went ahead and signed the contract. Look against what Trinidad has done. The Prime Minister of Trinidad at the opening of the investment conference at the Hyatt in Trinidad yesterday indicated that he insisted on a royalty of 12.5% on the gas reserves outside of Trinidad. 12.5% royalty. What we got? 2%. Even on the basis of good advice, we got 2%. Look what Suriname is getting, 6.5%. They're getting 36% taxes. And they're getting 100 million in signing bonus. We didn't even get a signing bonus. We got a pittance, 18 million to cover legal fees, because there's another interest there in the Guyana-Venezuelan border there, the oil there. We got they pay us the legal fees to go and fight this case. Rather than pay us that 100 million, we should have had $1 billion. Look at the example, the contrast of leadership, and look at the contrast in standard of living. There's a correlation between standard of living and making choices at the poll in selecting leaders. When you select leaders who can lead, a country benefits because they don't sell out our resources. All our resources are in foreign hands with no stake. Guyanese has no stake. That's why our plan for the oil sector is that all the blocks that are unassigned and even blocks that have not been worked on, that the investor hasn't delivered what they had to deliver, we will put it in a national oil company. And you'll see the difference between PPP, APNU, and us. And every Guyanese will have a stake in that company from birth. Every year we auction blocks, bringing in big signing bonus and auction fees. And every Guyanese get a stake in that, in dividends. Then the income from royalties and share of profits, we will put that in the National Resource Fund or the Sovereign Wealth Fund, whatever they call it. But we wouldn't leave it there. No minister has a hand in that, as in the case of PPP and APNU's policy. Parliament will appropriate monies to that fund and from that fund. But we will have specialized funds, infrastructural, education, poverty alleviation, healthcare, rural development, industrial development. Only that fund the minister is authorized to pay, to use as part of budgetary allocation only. You see, look at the difference, and look at the difference in benefits and the standard of living that we will bring to the Guyanese population. Because both of them say they will not renegotiate the contracts. When it's pellucidly clear that something went wrong. Just last week we mentioned that we will set up a commission of inquiry to look into the processes and the negotiations, documentary evidence, to see where the problem lies, to see who is accountable, because somebody has to be made accountable. The president is on autopilot. He don't look at anything. Allow the minister to do what the hell they want without no control. They sit at cabinet every week. What they talk about when our resources are being silently given away. You see, somebody has to be held accountable, and we will do that. Even as we mentioned that, and I put it out to the press, yesterday we saw the opinion of Global Witness, the UK-based international resource corruption watchdog, who is recommending the same course of action that we outlined. So look at the difference in leadership. An international watchdog, resource watchdog, to ensure that countries get the benefit, the people benefit from natural resources, is in fact endorsing Change Guyana's plan, right? And they sit, they work 8 hours a day, every day, go to cabinet all day, and they cannot come up to a plan. So that's the point I'm making, the problem of leadership. Global Witness is saying we'd stand to lose $55 billion on the Stabroek block alone over 40 years. $55 billion. Let's say $1 million now to go into Alboistong. You know what it would do to that community? $1 million US in Linden, what it will do to job creation by supporting an entrepreneurial fund and help small and medium-sized businesses. What it will do Essequibo Coast and New Amsterdam and everywhere, all depressed communities, and we can give away $55 billion. And we are now refusing to do what the people is demanding, to renegotiate the contracts. I believe our position is to renegotiate, because I believe, I'm a businessman, I have experience in this. I believe the oil companies are very reasonable people. They have good ethics, they have good social and corporate responsibilities. And it's even in the oil companies' business interests to renegotiate, because their PR and their sense of pride and accomplishment and success in bringing value to the country in which they operate, they will come to the table. We give away the gas and nobody knows who owns the gas. Trinidad insists that the government of people of Trinidad own the gas and the oil companies own the oil. And that's what powered Trinidad and make it a per capita income of $17,000 US when ours is at an embarrassing level of $4,000 US per capita per annum. The failure of leadership has gotten us in this situation. So our plan, a very essential ingredient in our plans, our economic plan, is to make all investments inclusive. Everybody benefits, every community benefits in some way. And we have regional development plans, not just plans in Georgetown, because they take the taxes all across the country. They take a dividend from the Linden Bauxite Company there, and they spend it in Georgetown and nothing in Linden. Our plan is a more inclusive economic plan. And our focus we will focus significantly on ownership of lands. I mentioned that all sugar workers displaced have a right to those lands and no one else. And when you give people lands, you elevate them, they have property. The evolution of wealth all over the world through civilization has been the acquisition of land and the development of those lands. We send our resources overseas for value to be created. And those value created are now sold back to us at significantly higher margins. We make billionaires overseas while we remain in poverty. That has to stop. Ownership of business will be a central core of our policies. An investor wants to do business here, they come as a strategic investor, bring capital, technology, expertise. Guyanese must have a stake. Look at what they did with telecommunications. They give one company, right? Then they give them a monopoly for probably 100 years. Look, the state of our internet in this country. And despite the fact that it was a campaign promise 5 years down the line, even having a minister of telecommunication, they can't liberalize the sector. We will do what one local company did, bring their own fiber cable, so that local people have ownership in every sector of this economy. And that's how we will uplift all communities. Because when local people have the stake, the profits remain, it's reinvested all around, they uplift their own communities. So whereas what they did with telecommunications, we would have done it a different way. The people of this country should have had equity in that company, a formula. Instead, they sold the 30% that the government had to a Chinese company. Instead of giving it to the workers of GT&T, give workers participation in ownership and management. That's the program that we will bring, and that's how we will uplift communities. We must have the ownership of our coastline, our seafront, our riverfront, our mountains, and our grasslands, our gold, our diamond, our bauxite, our gas. We must have a stake in all this. We must not be employees only, and when an industry fails, like the situation in Kokwani, we are left with nothing at all. They just dumped 326 people on the breadline there and closed the operation. You know, that's unfair, that's an injustice, and the unions, Lincoln Lewis said this is an uncaring government. The APNU administration is an uncaring government. They are reactive, not proactive. How many times this happened in Kokwani? And they never gone there. They never sit down and bring a holistic solution to the problem. We will do the same. We mentioned we'll set up that gold refinery, and Guyanese will have a stake in that. They will give it to their friends. We want the people of Guyana to have a stake in everything we do. That is our inclusive way of uplifting all communities. We must create structures and systems that give every businessman and woman, every local businessmen and women, but also average persons, nurses, teachers, police, public servants, everyone a stake in our economy. We must not only be employees, we must also be owners. While we encourage and invite foreign investors who bring capital and technology, we must create and foster a culture of entrepreneurship at every level. Poverty has no place in a resource-rich country like ours. We must eliminate poverty from every corner of our country. Policymakers must lead with the right policy to create a fertile ground to spur this quest for ownership. The transformation this will bring to our economy is limitless. What if we had a stake in bauxite? The government retained the 10%, but allow Rusal to dictate the terms. If that stake had been transferred to a local company with the people or workers of Kokwani and Linden as stakeholders, local management's participation, the economic outturn would have been different. Our people should not be only employees but owners. I mentioned that a similar situation exists in sugar. The PPP and APNU, the two sides of the same coin, want to keep us in a survival mode, hopeless and eager to wave their flags and dance to their racially divisive lyrics to divide and rule us, while they sell us out to their powerful friends. Their record in government tells a tale of failed promises, incompetence, and mismanagement. Extortionately high level of taxes to finance large, expensive bureaucracy while the masses live in poverty. Mismanagement at every level. failure of bauxite, bankrupting of Gaisuco, bankrupting of NIS, the gold board with an accumulated deficit of $19 billion, national printers running a deficit of close to $1 billion, GPL running a deficit of more than $8 billion in the last 2 years. When will this drain of public resources discontinue? Mismanagement after mismanagement, incompetence after incompetence. The cost to this nation is enormous. With the support given to Gaisuco and GPL alone, just to state an example, of $100 billion in the last 10 years. It is no secret where our country could have been had we had better management. And we wonder what if these state corporations were managed effectively, if we had insist on local ownership and find the financing to support those local ownership, what could have happened? And I mentioned the case of only two, Gaisuco and GPL. We could have had 2 bridges across the Demerara River and a bridge across the Corentyne River as well. A network of highways and roads to the airport and Letem and across our country. State-of-the-art hospitals in Georgetown and across Guyana. We could have had 5G telecommunications infrastructure in Guyana right now, locally owned. A state-of-the-art smart grid delivering reliable, low-cost electricity, powering our homes and industries. Large-scale agricultural and industrial development in the city and coastlands. Imagine the impact of better management. The point is what better management brings, what leadership brings, right? What that could have done to job creation, youth empowerment, and a happy life for all.